Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive.
And what a tangled web it is. So hello everybody, welcome to another Haunts of Brisbane video. Now for anybody who's been following Haunts of Brisbane, you'll know that a couple of months ago we put up a video where we were attacked on Haunts of Brisbane by a couple of gronks who go by the name of Night Watchers Paranormal Australia. Now if you haven't seen that video, it'll be in our video list. I'll pop the link down underneath this video if you haven't caught it already. But we were attacked for putting up a couple of posts. We literally just shared a couple of articles that were quite critical of the damage that paranormal groups do to historical sites. Now, in amongst those articles, Night Watchers Paranormal video came up. They weren't named by name, but here we are, guys. I'm naming you. And all hell broke loose. There were threats of slander, of deformation, being deformed, apparently. And the Haunts of Brisbane didn't escape unscathed. We got threatened with deformatory action, literally for sharing these articles. Now, before I go into this, when we talk about Night Watchers Paranormal, let's not overlook the fact that for a supposedly professional paranormal group, only 3 years ago, virtually not even 3 years ago, these guys, two doyens of the paranormal, were on YouTube doing reaction videos, funny videos, what crap can we eat videos, trying to get some likes. And that obviously didn't work out well for them. So they decided that they were going to venture into the paranormal. And here we are, only 36 months down the track, not even. And they're claiming to be God's gift to the paranormal. The two of them think that they're Zach Baggins. So quite the transformation from eating duck eggs, 100-year-old duck eggs and fish eyeballs, to deciding that they're God's gift to the paranormal, they're ghost adventures apparently. Now, given the very, very short length that they've been in the paranormal, it would probably explain why they stumble and stammer every time they're asked about basic equipment like parabolic microphones, Pete and Dan. Why you guys recommend K2 meters over all other equipment and voice recorders. Dan, voice recorders, don't use an Olympic, just use your mobile phone because it's got a way better spectrum on a mobile phone. But the more that we look into this, and I will put up another video in the links below, this one right here, a couple of weeks ago, somehow or other, don't ask me how, these guys seem to have gotten access to the HMAS Diamantina at the Queensland Maritime Museum. Now, as part of a live stream that these two did back a couple of weeks ago, dear old Pete, same guy who accused me of deformatory action, came out quite clearly in a live stream which, mind you, has still not been corrected, and said that the HMAS Diamantina was built in 1860.
Now this ship was also built around I think it was 1860. He said to us, Casper. I think it was about 1860 that the Diamantina was actually built.
Now, if you watch the video that we did on this just quite mind-bending slip of the tongue, I wouldn't even call it a slip of the tongue, because who the hell thinks that a big naval frigate, a warship, was built in 1860, you know, the age of sail still. It defies description. But there were some to and froing back on the Queensland Maritime Museum page. Now, I won't say kudos to the Queensland Museum page, because you're part and parcel of this now, guys. What the hell were you thinking, letting some funny videos, YouTubers who are clearly looking for attention, now venturing into the paranormal, into what is, has been an absolute staple of Brisbane heritage sites or history museums. I just don't clearly understand. But when we have a look at what went down on the Queensland Maritime Museum page, it's very, very interesting. Now, keep in mind that this was on the QMM page. It was definitely not on the Night Watchers Paranormal page. And the only reason that I think that it wasn't on the Night Watchers Paranormal page is that good old Pete and Dan obviously have admin access to delete any dissenting voices on their own page, but can't delete dissenting voices on the Queensland Maritime Museum page. But let's have a look at some of the things that were said on the back end of the crazy 1860s quote. Notwithstanding the fact that QMM, Queensland Maritime Museum, were running a professional marketing campaign all over their Facebook page for Night Watchers Paranormal, Chris Dawson, a professional historian, decided to reach out to the Queensland Maritime Museum, as he had every right to do as a professional historian, and also considering that a couple of months ago, when Haunts of Brisbane were attacked by Night Watchers Paranormal, we were attacked because we shared Chris Dawson's articles. Now, Chris Dawson reached out to the Maritime Museum against one of their advertising campaigns for this ghost hunt that was going on in the HMAS Diamantina, and he wrote, "Built in the 1860s, hey?" Obviously had watched our video. That's what you get for allowing cheap attention seekers like this onto your property. Stick to history, Queensland Maritime Museum. To which Night Watchers Paranormal, Dan, the hero that you are, reached out on the Queensland Maritime Museum page and you let fly. Now, Dan says in his response that if you had watched the live stream, you would see that we said it was constructed in 1943. And if you watch the video, you would see that the information was given by the chairman of the Maritime Museum, who has been involved with the museum for over 40 years. Now, we see Pete mention Casper, and Dan, no, you didn't do anything. This was all on Pete. Pete was the one who said 1860. Now, there's considerably more to this response. I'm not going to read it out. There's lots about slander and being deformed, and about how Night Watchers Paranormal are only getting stronger every time somebody calls them out on their bullshit. But again, it is what it is, right? But that wasn't the only pushback that the Queensland Maritime Museum got on their Facebook page against another advertisement that they'd placed, saying that there was going to be a professional paranormal investigation and they were looking forward to the results. Another person, Julianne, had piped in and had another chop at Night Watchers Paranormal over the 1860s gaffe. Now, she said that considering that they can't even get the HMAS Diamantina date of commission correct, seriously, 1860s Night Watchers, don't expect anything factual or substantial. What were you even thinking allowing them onto the ship? Now, what's very interesting here is Daniel Rickard, coming from his personal account, not the Night Watchers Paranormal account, has a very different take this time. Different take to the Chris Dawson response on the Queensland Maritime Museum page, where he was baying that Night Watchers Paranormal had absolutely stated that 1943 was the date of the ship. This time around, he thanks Julianne for her comment and says that comment was made on our live stream accidentally, and I corrected it by saying that it was constructed on the correct date. Now, Dan, again, Pete was the one who had this massive gaffe. You didn't say a word. Now, for anyone who jumps back onto the Night Watchers Paranormal Australia page, you've still not corrected your video. It's still up. It still states 1860. There's no correction whatsoever being made. Now, Julianne's jumped straight back on Dan, as she has every right to do. And she's gone, accidentally? Did you even bother to do your own research before you accidentally live streamed? how many people watch your live stream accidentally heard 1860 because 1860 was said and now believe that the HMAS Diamantina was actually built in 1860? That was a pretty big accidentally spew of the mouth. What else of the HMAS Diamantina have you accidentally got wrong? And this is where we're going to get into the final part of this video, the final segment that shows how these accidental things happen, considering that Night Watchers Paranormal clearly have a business model, the way that they do their videos, and it's quite shocking. But I'll leave it up to Pete and Dan to explain exactly how this happened.
Because you got to remember, guys, too, is a lot of the time when we go into an investigation, we're only in there for an hour and a half to 2 hours max. So everything that we capture is happening in 2 hours, an hour and a half to 2 hours. Yeah. So we get a lot of paranormal investigators contacting us, other teams going, you will get more in 2 hours than we do in a whole 12-hour period, like an overnight, and it's like, well.
So how do they get all of that evidence? According to Dan. Now, when we have a look at that 1.5 to 2 hour admission, these guys, Night Watchers Paranormal, swoop into a site. They get an hour and a half's worth of video. They go home. They write a script as to how they're going to betray a certain site. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, we've got a heap of ghostly stuff. We've got disembodied voices and cat balls going off and K2 meters, especially in the Diamantina, where you've got a big metal warship that is sitting propped up. It's vibrating, so God knows cat balls are going to work well. Again, metal ship, K2 meters going off. I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't frequent EMF meters running through a big metal tube, big metal warship. But this is the kind of stuff that these guys do. Like, it's an absolute farce. They're YouTubers who are failed at doing reaction videos and funny what can we eat videos. And they are taking the mickey when it comes to the paranormal field. They've been doing it for a couple of years now, and we shouldn't be giving them the time of day. Now, when it comes to the history of sites, and this is where it really gets my goat up, these paranormal groups that are destroying history, we've already seen that they've tried to backpedal from the 1860s quote that was put up on one of their live streams. They're claiming that, no, we said 1943. Another comment said, oh, no, we actually did say 1860s. It was a slip of the tongue, but we immediately corrected it. Guys, you definitely said 1860. You've not corrected it on your page. You've posted this crap all over the Queensland Maritime Museum page in the hope that you're going to save some face. But one other really clincher moment came from one of your other live streams through October, on the 12th of October, that absolutely puts the nail in the coffin that leading up to your big investigation of the HMAS Diamantina, you hadn't even remotely looked into the history of this ship. Now, again, this is a clanger that comes from Pete, because clearly the history is not Pete's strong point, but I'll leave it to Pete to drop this one.
I think it's amazing that we've been given this privilege to be allowed to go in and investigate such a place that is, I guess, so thick with history, and especially being a warship. I think the pain and suffering that ship would have seen is really going to come through.
So pain and suffering it is. Who knows? Maybe Pete's watched a few too many World War II movies. He thinks the HMAS Diamantina was in Pearl Harbor. But just for the record, the HMAS Diamantina, and this stuff, you can Google it. There's a Wikipedia page. You can jump on the Australian Navy page and look this stuff up. God, you could even go to the Queensland Maritime Museum page and look a lot of this stuff up. But as far as the HMAS Diamantina was concerned, she went to sea from Maryborough in 1945, so at the very, very tail end of World War II. She did some coastal bombardments up through the islands just north of Australia, and she only came under fire once. That one instance of coming under fire, the fire landed well astern of the ship. She never took active fire. So any insinuation that there was pain and suffering, or phenomenal pain and suffering on the ship, that will give rise to ghosts or like dead crew members, is absolute fallacy. And it just goes to show that Night Watch's Paranormal didn't even attempt to Google the history of this ship before they went in. They got access. They wanted their 1.5 hours of fame to bang out a couple of videos. Unfortunately, Queensland Maritime Museum, which we all know, if you've been watching the media the last couple of years, is absolutely strapped for cash and looking for people to come and visit. Was suck it in and let these guys through the door. But this should be a lesson, not only to the paranormal community, to not follow these groups who are just fly-by-nighters and looking for clicks. It's just clickbait, guys. But it should also be an absolute warning call to historical venues, exactly like the Queensland Maritime Museum, not to let these guys in. Now, as far as the Queensland Maritime Museum is concerned, I see from your Facebook page that you've got an AGM coming up. Now, not wanting to say it, but I'm going to say it. If I was a member of the Queensland Maritime Museum and I had an AGM coming up, I would be turning up to your AGM and absolutely decrying letting a clickbaiter YouTube channel in and defiling probably the greatest asset that you've got in your museum. Now, for anybody else who lives around Brisbane or the wider southeast Queensland region who knows the HMAS Diamantina, I would also be messaging the Queensland Maritime Museum and begging them not to let somebody like Night Watch's Queensland Paranormal back into the Maritime Museum. It's a no-brainer. So with that said, I'll leave this video here. Pete and Dan, you can throw some more allegations at me of slander and deforming your character. But again, I'm just going to throw more and more of this stuff at you if you choose to.